Okay, well, I'm happy to say that I finished up my other task, and I still have a little bit of time for us to be able to finish up our final priority, priority number 5, and it has to do with access to your computer. Who has access to your computer, and what can they do to and with your computer if they gain access? Now, let's think about it. We've been trying to cover all of our bases here to maintain a safe and reliable computing environment. We started with backup, recognizing that chances are you've already been using a computer, you have data, personal data on your computer that we need to get out of harm's way. If your computer hard drive were to crash, the most important element that we want to save is going to be your personal user data. We can replace everything else like we discussed in our first session, but we won't be able to replace your data. The second issue had to do with power. The computer's lifeblood is power, but it requires clean power, reliable power, consistent power. And frankly, the power that we're getting through our electric company is oftentimes anything but that. So we need to have surge protection, battery backup, automatic voltage regulation, and line conditioning to assure that clean, reliable stream of electricity is consistently being delivered to our personal computer. Okay, then we talked about maintenance. Actually, maintenance to both the hardware and the software. How to maintain the computer in good operating condition. That just makes sense. Then we talked about online security, recognizing that practically every computer out there now has some type of connectivity to the internet. There are very few exceptions to that. And so we talked about having a whole team of players, what I call a front line of defense, to be able to cover all the bases where it comes to online security. We need to keep those programs updated, we need to keep those definitions updated, and then we need to use those programs. Some programs run automatically, quite often your antivirus will. Other programs are going to require that you deliberately run those scans, and those need to be done on at least a weekly basis, in my opinion. But finally, we come down to access to your computer. Now, each one of these priorities has covered an area that has very commonly been the source of problems for my customers. And this area is no exception. Even though it's last, it's by no means least. Give you a little bit of a story. Typically, it's around the holidays that I see an increase in calls from my customers for some pretty serious problems on their computer. Why might the holidays be a time when I see an increase of this type of activity? Well, the reason is pretty simple. Up until the holidays, chances are my customers have just been doing what they've always done, and hardly anybody else has access to their computers. But enter the holidays, enter friends, relatives, associates, they just want to borrow your computer. And the next thing you know, you're starting to have problems. It happened to me this summer. It wasn't intentional, it's just that some of the folks that came to visit used computers in a different way than we do as a family, and lo and behold, we got a serious rootkit on one of my computers. It took me 6 hours to get it all cleaned up. Now, I've got 2 shirts here. One is Social Engineering Specialist. Some of you may know what that means. I've still kept my security t-shirt here visible. Social Engineering Specialist really has a lot to do with access to your computer, because on the back it says, because there's no patch for human stupidity. What are we talking about, Social Engineering Specialist? Well, let's just put it this way. I don't need to be a hacker. I don't need to be able to write all sorts of malicious code. I don't need to be elite when it comes to penetrating through firewalls or getting past your internet security, if through one means or another I can get physical access to your computer. If I can get physical access to your computer, everything else is cleared out of the way. This is also true, access is relevant when it comes to any computer that you may take out in public, namely notebook computers. You have to realize that it doesn't matter what type of security you have on there, Basically, if I can get a hold of your computer, I can get your data. Okay, even if it's encrypted, there's ways around all that one way or the other. So access to your computer is really important. I tell folks this: they don't call them personal computers for nothing. They are personal. They contain personal data. My personal computer is off limits to anybody else. I tell guys, listen, I won't ask to borrow your wife. You don't ask to borrow my computer. It's personal. Okay? You need to set some rules for your personal computer. It's one thing to let somebody watch your TV. They aren't going to hurt it. Okay? It's another thing to let them spend 5 minutes on your computer. I recommend, if you're able to afford it, have a less expensive computer that you allow, say, the grandkids or visitors to use, and keep your computer totally off limits. If I had my way in a perfect world, every individual would have their own computer. And then if we want to share a computer, if we want to share access to the internet, let's set up a separate computer where my personal data, what's important to me, is not in harm's way. There we have it. Priorities 1 through 5. I honestly believe that if you'll cover all these bases, you can maintain a safe and reliable computing environment with a minimal number of problems. We're all going to encounter some type of problem, but there's a lot of them that we can avoid if we just take some very common sense steps. Enjoyed spending the evening with you. Hope you benefited from these talks. Good night.